Hey guys, today I'm going to build a little piece of furniture. It's going to be a charging station. It's also going to have storage for sketchbooks on the bottom, but mostly I wanted a place to charge my camera and field monitor batteries without having them covered in cat hair in a corner on the floor. I'm also adding a spot on top for me to charge my VR headset and the battery for that, and a little shelf above that for fake plants because I don't want to have to water real plants around a bunch of electronics. So to truly test myself and make sure I've retained what I've learned so far, I'm not going to be able to ask for help for this. That's a rule that I'm putting on myself. And I'm also going to add doors, and that means I need to get hinges. There's a couple different types of hinges. There are inset and overlay, and I'm going to be using inset because I want my door to be inset inside the frame of the cabinet as opposed to overlapping the frame. So as usual, I started with an 8x4 foot sheet of MDF, and I made a template so I could follow along and make all of my cuts at home. But I did have the people at Home Depot cut it a few times just to get it down to size so I wouldn't have to pay for delivery fees. I always love making templates like this. I find it to be so freaking satisfying. So I do live in Canada, and that means it was winter and I had to cut all the pieces inside. So that's a terrible idea because I had to vacuum like 10 times, and I dusted the walls and the ceiling like 5 or 6 times before I stopped seeing MDF particles. MDF particles are not good to breathe in. We had to change the air filter and everything, but this is what I had to do if I didn't want to wait for 6 months. To cut the general shape of the curvature I put in the 3D model, I used a variety of mixing bowls until I liked how it looked, and then I just went ahead and traced it and cut it with my jigsaw. I kind of like finding things around the house to trace for curves like this, but I should also probably get a woodworking compass. I put together the base of the cabinet on the floor, then I dragged over an old TV cabinet so I could build the rest of the carcass on top of it. 110 PSI seems to be the sweet spot for the nail gun on MDF. I waited until this point to cut the little shelf that goes on top because I knew the curvature would be a little different from the 3D model, so this way I could line it up exactly with what I ended up with. And with that, the basic structure was complete. I decided to cut these pieces to make it more stable and also to have stoppers for the doors so they have something to bump up against when they close. And I put rounded edges on it because I think it makes it more interesting. The last piece to cut was this angled piece here, and the reason that's there is because if I lay some of my art books flat, then they won't fit. So this way, if I put them diagonally, there's actually more space, even though I'm kind of technically taking up more space down there. And this little piece stops the art books from sliding off. I installed it back a little bit in case I ended up wanting to install another door on the bottom, but I ended up liking the open look that I had originally modeled, so I'm just going to keep it that way. I installed more of those stoppers down here, but since there's no door going here and it's already very sturdy as a whole, there's no real reason to put this in here. It actually just eats up space for the larger sketchbooks a little bit. I still have enough room for them, but if I did this again, I would not attach these here. So of course, now it is time to paint, which is one of the most satisfying parts, but I also kind of wish that I had painted everything before I put it together. The thing is that you save a lot of time by painting it afterwards, but if you do it beforehand, it's a lot less awkward. So doing this, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of injured my shoulder and it still is sore today, but to lay all of the pieces out individually and paint each side and then flip it would have taken a very long time, especially because I don't have space for all of the pieces at one time. I did what I normally do here, which is 3 layers of primer and 1 layer of paint. It's melamine, which is nice and durable, and that's especially good because after this, I was really not feeling like doing 3 layers of Varathane and sanding between some of those layers. I might end up going back and doing some Varathane eventually, but like I said, melamine is pretty durable, so it's not a huge deal if I leave it. I brought the cabinet over to the spot where I would actually be using it because it was getting really heavy, because MDF is just heavy, so I was going to attach the doors right here. The 2 things that seem to matter most when choosing hinges is, do you want inset or overlay hinges, and also do the hinges match the thickness of the door that you're using. Once you have those 2 things figured out, you really just have to do a lot of measuring and make sure you get it right the first try, because you're going to have to drill some very large holes into those doors, and getting that wrong would suck balls. Sometimes I just get locked into this like narration voice. I gotta say something about sucking balls or something every once in a while, or else I feel like a robot. Anyway, using this cool ass drill bit was pretty fun. You get to drill out those massive holes like I was saying, and all the MDF dust goes flying everywhere, which was kind of fun to do. And yeah, the measurements turned out excellent, so very happy I didn't have to make literally entire new doors because that's what would have happened if I had messed these up. My right angle measuring device was too large to fit into this area here in the cabinet. God, putting sentences together is like the hardest thing about making videos. Anyway, there's a block of wood that has a right angle on it, so I used that because it fit in here. Just made sure that it was actually a right angle, and it worked perfectly fine to get some of these measurements down. Again, you want to spend a lot of time on the measurements for this type of thing, because if you mess it up, then you've got permanently drilled holes into your cabinet and then nothing lines up and the doors won't close properly. However, if you're off just a little bit, there's a lot of adjustment that you can do afterwards. So the hinges have a bunch of different ways that you can adjust them up, down. You can change the angle in different directions. So, oh, by the way, this happened. That is sick. How do I open it? It's very that's hilarious. That is the exact moment I realize I need handles to open the doors. Ultimately, they open and close wonderfully, and I'm really happy that I made them really tight. The space between the door and the frame is like a 32nd of an inch. It's a little more than that maybe, but I made it line up nicely. I'm very happy with how it turned out. I'm depressed, you guys, I'm tired. But I'm so happy that I made the cabinet. God. And now it's time for the glamour shots. Sit back, relax, and imagine yourself charging batteries and stuff.